Hi, I am Benjamin Maliki. My background is in analytical chemistry, but I have spent a good part of my career working at the intersection of science and business, including experience in both CRO and CDMO environments. And one thing I have noticed is that selling outsourcing services in life sciences can take a really long time. So, the question I want to explore today is pretty simple. Can we identify that an account is becoming ready to buy before the RFP actually shows up? That's really what this presentation is about. This is probably the most important idea in the whole presentation. We often think of the RFP as the beginning of the sales opportunity. But in reality, by the time that RFP lands in your box, a lot of the buying decision may have already happened. The customer has probably been thinking about the problem, evaluating options, talking internally, maybe talking to other vendors. So if we only react when the RFP arrives, we may already be late. The opportunity is really everything that happens before that point. If you are a CRO or a CDMO, there are potentially hundreds or thousands of companies you could go after. And every company is generating information all the time. The problem isn't really a lack of data. It is the opposite. There is too much of it. You have companies raising money, starting trials, changing pipelines, hiring scientists, expanding facilities. All kinds of things are happening. But not every signal means there is an outsourcing opportunity. So the real challenge is figuring out which signals actually matters. This slide is how I think about buying journey. It can start with something like funding. Then maybe the pipeline develops, a clinical milestones happens, and eventually the company realizes, okay, we need some external capability here. Then they start evaluating vendors, and only after all of that do we get to the RFP. So there is this pretty large pre-RFP window where a lot of useful things are happening. That's the window I'm interested in. Because if we can recognize what's happening there, we have a much better chance of engaging at the right time. The interesting thing is that accounts actually leave clues. You might see a funding event. You might see a new clinical trial. Maybe there is a pipeline change or a new modality. Maybe there is hiring people with a very specific scientific background. None of those things by themselves necessarily means this company is ready to buy. But when you start seeing several of these things happening together, the picture becomes much more interesting. So instead of asking who could potentially be a customer, I think the better question is which accounts are showing signs that a need is developing. And this is where I think a lot of organizations struggle. The information is actually out there. You have your CRM, you have LinkedIn, you have clinical trial information, company website, news, financial information, and then of course your own internal knowledge. The problem is that all of these pieces are sitting in different places. So somebody has to manually put the pieces together. And when that happens, you can end up with fragmented information, a lot of manual research, and ultimately inconsistent decisions about which accounts deserve attention. The cost of that fragmentation is really BD time. Someone searches for an account, then researches it, puts information into a spreadsheet, moves it into the CRM, discusses that with this team, prioritize it, and then finally reaches out. And sometimes you go through that whole process and realize, actually, this probably wasn't a great account to begin with. Then you start the process again. So the issue isn't that BD teams aren't working hard, they absolutely are. The issue is making sure that effort is focused on the right accounts. This is another problem I see quite often. Marketing and BD may be looking at exactly the same company, but they are looking at it through different lenses. Marketing might be thinking about brand awareness, engagement, leads, and website activity. BD is thinking, okay, but when is this actually going to become a deal? They are not necessarily disagreeing, they are just asking different questions. And I think the opportunity is to connect those two perspectives. Instead of marketing saying this account is highly engaged and BD saying that account doesn't mean anything to me, we need to ask, what does that engagement mean in the context of an actual buying journey to account selection? Are we actually targeting the accounts that are most likely to need us? Or are we mostly targeting the companies we already know because we have relationships with? There are some pretty significant changes happening in the market. Smaller biotech companies are developing, new scientific modalities are emerging, and speed is becoming increasingly important. So the ideal account today may not look exactly like the ideal account we were targeting a few years ago. The question is, are our targeting strategies changing as quickly as the market is changing? So this is the framework I would use to bring everything together. I like to keep it pretty simple: who, why, and when. First, who is actually likely to need outsourcing? Then, why would they need it? Is there a capacity issue, a technical gap, a new program, some kind of upcoming milestone? And finally, when should we engage? Because even if you are identifying the right company and the right need, timing still matters. You don't necessarily want to call somebody 6 months too early. And you definitely don't want to wait until the RFP is already sitting on their desk. So the goal is really to connect the right account, the right reason, and the right moment. So I will leave you with these questions. How does your organization actually decide that an account is becoming ready to buy? Do marketing and business development agree on what a buying signal actually looks like? And how much time is your team spending manually trying to connect all of these different pieces of information? Because I think the biggest opportunity isn't simply generating more leads. It is getting better at recognizing which accounts are becoming ready, why they are becoming ready, and when to engage. That's where I think we can make the commercial process a lot more efficient.